They say the dead can't hurt you, but in that moment, sitting across from my sister while my mother's will was read aloud, it felt like Mom had reached out from the grave and slapped me across the face. My chest tightened. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Delaney sat next to me, with one leg crossed over the other, tapping her long nails on her phone like she was bored, like she already knew what was coming. Her hair was perfect. Her dress didn't have a single wrinkle. And that smirk, God, that smirk, sat quietly at the corner of her lips like she'd already won. Across the room, Uncle Marshall opened a thick file, the pages of the will rustling louder than they should have. His office smelled like old paper and lemon polish. The sunlight through the blinds made lines across the carpet like prison bars. My palms were damp as I pressed them into my lap, trying to anchor myself, trying not to hope. But I had hoped. Deep down, I really believed Mom would have left something meaningful for me. Not the house maybe, not both cars, but her engagement ring. The one she promised me when I was 16, when we sat in her garden talking about weddings and first loves. Uncle Marshall cleared his throat. Per the last will and testament of Evelyn Lane. My pulse quickened. My stomach turned cold. To my daughter Delaney Reed, I leave the family home, both vehicles and all personal heirlooms, including my engagement ring. The room went silent. I froze. It was like the words didn't make sense at first, like they were in another language. Then they hit, one by one, and with each word something inside me cracked. I turned to look at Delaney. She didn't look surprised. Her eyes didn't even flicker. That smug little smile just deepened. I felt a knot rising in my throat. My nails dug into my palm until the skin stung. Uncle Marshall continued, "To my daughter Harper Lane, I leave a monetary gift in the..." That was all I heard. I couldn't focus on the number. It didn't matter. Nothing did. In that moment, the walls were closing in around me. My mother was gone. And now she'd left me with nothing, no words, no heirloom, no goodbye. Delaney slowly stood, gathering the documents with the grace of someone who thought the world owed her everything. She stepped close, too close, and leaned in, her voice as smooth and sharp as glass. "She always said you weren't responsible enough, Harper." Guess she meant it. Her perfume hit me, roses and vanilla. Too sweet. Too fake. I stared at the floor, jaw clenched, heart pounding in my ears. I didn't trust myself to speak. I was afraid if I opened my mouth, it would all come spilling out. Years of resentment, grief, confusion. And still, she walked out without a single glance back. Uncle Marshall muttered something about probate and formalities, but I wasn't listening. I couldn't. The chair beneath me felt a mile away. The air was thick, my lungs barely working. My mother, the woman I'd cared for in her final months, whose hand I held through chemo, whose eyes I closed when she passed, had erased me. Or so it seemed. I left the office in a daze, the world outside too bright, too loud. That night, I sat alone in her room, surrounded by silence, grief pressing in from every corner. But then I noticed her old Bible on the nightstand. I picked it up, just looking for something that still smelled like her. And that's when everything changed. The house was still, too still. I sat in Mom's bedroom, the same place where I held her hand while she slipped away just weeks ago. The soft ticking of the wall clock was the only sound in the room, each second echoing like a countdown I hadn't realized had started. My fingers ran over the edges of her comforter. Sun-faded, still smelling faintly of lavender and something warmer, something her. I didn't know what I was looking for, not really. Maybe a goodbye. Maybe proof that what happened in Uncle Marshall's office wasn't the full story. The words Delaney whispered still rang in my ears. She always said you weren't responsible enough. Was that true? Had Mom said that to her? Did she mean it? My throat tightened. I'd given up so much, my job, my apartment, the life I was building, to come back here and care for her. I didn't do it for a reward. But still. To be left with nothing? No keepsake, no letter, no parting words? I didn't know what hurt more, being excluded or the idea that maybe she had seen me as less. I stood up, suddenly needing to move, to do something. I opened her dresser drawers, one by one, socks, scarves, a collection of birthday cards she never threw away. Nothing unusual. The desk drawers were locked, as always. I didn't have the key. She kept it on a little chain around her neck, now buried with her. Then I saw it, the Bible. It had been there on her nightstand for as long as I could remember, leather-bound, cracked at the spine, a satin ribbon worn thin from use. She read from it every morning, marked verses with little hearts and handwritten notes in the margins. I pulled it gently into my lap. Pages were soft from age and thumbing. I flipped through slowly at first, scanning verses I knew by heart. And then something fell. A folded paper fluttered to the floor, tucked deep between the pages of Psalms. My heart leapt. I froze for a second, not daring to breathe. Then I picked it up. It wasn't just one sheet. It was a letter, handwritten in Mom's script, and a second official-looking document folded inside it. My hands began to shake as I unfolded the pages. At the top of the letter, in Mom's slanted handwriting, were the words, "If you're reading this, Harper, then something's gone wrong." I blinked hard, suddenly dizzy. Gone wrong. Wrong? What did that mean? Her voice was in my head as I read the next line. I didn't trust Delaney to do the right thing. I left instructions with Marshall, but if this version of my will wasn't honored, then it means the wrong one was read. I covered my mouth with my hand. My chest felt like it might cave in. The second document, it was a new will. One that listed me as the primary beneficiary. The house. The ring. Personal items. All of it. She did remember me. She did see me. Tears welled up, but I didn't let them fall, not yet. I wasn't angry, not in that moment. What I felt was something heavier, like a tide shifting after a long storm. Relief, but also purpose. Delaney had lied. Or manipulated. Or maybe Uncle Marshall had made a mistake. But I had proof now. Proof Mom hadn't abandoned me. She had tried to protect me in the only way she could. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. The next morning, the air in the house felt different, sharper, like it knew something was about to happen. I stood in the kitchen, holding the letter in one hand and Mom's Bible in the other. My coffee had gone cold. I hadn't slept, but I didn't feel tired. I felt awake, wired with a strange mix of grief, vindication, and something I hadn't felt in weeks, clarity. She hadn't forgotten me. She'd planned for this. She'd known. All I could think about was that line, "If you're reading this, Harper, then something's gone wrong." I stared at the updated will again, just to make sure I hadn't imagined it, dated only 2 months before she passed, signed, witnessed. It was real. The house. The heirlooms. The engagement ring. She meant for them to come to me. She meant for her quiet daughter, the one who stayed behind, to have a piece of her legacy. So what happened? Had Delaney found a way to manipulate Uncle Mar? Had he made a mistake? Or had he simply used the wrong version by accident? I didn't know. But I was done wondering. By mid-morning, I called Uncle Marshall's office. His assistant answered, polite but hesitant, as if she could hear something in my voice. I asked for an appointment, urgent. Not later in the week. Not next Tuesday. Today. I brought the letter. The Bible. The updated will. I didn't tell Delaney I was coming. I didn't need to. But when I arrived at the law office, she was already there. She was sitting in the same chair as before, scrolling through her phone again, nails painted a deep plum today. I stopped in the doorway. She glanced up, gave me that little smirk again, the same one that haunted me for years. Only this time it didn't land. I held her gaze and sat down across from her. "You look intense," she said, arching one perfect eyebrow. "I found something," I said calmly. I placed the Bible on the table between us. Then the letter. Finally, the updated will. Uncle Marshall walked in right as I laid it out. He paused in the doorway, eyes narrowing as he looked at the documents. His face shifted almost instantly from neutral to concerned. "This was in Mom's Bible," I said, my voice steady. "It's dated later than the one you read. This is her final will." Delanne sat up straighter, color draining from her face. "What is that?" she asked, her voice no longer smooth, sharper now on edge. Uncle Marshall picked up the will, adjusted his glasses, and read quickly. His brows furrowed deeper with every line. He didn't say anything at first. "Marshall," Delaney snapped. "This is ridiculous. That Bible could have come from anywhere." "She wrote it," I said, barely above a whisper. "And she knew this might happen. That's why she left it somewhere only I'd look. She trusted me." He looked up, and I could see it in his eyes before he even said the words. "This document is valid," he said. "It's signed, dated, witnessed. It overrides the previous version." Delanne's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She blinked once. Twice. That smirk gone. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, still as stone. Because this wasn't about winning. It wasn't about property or rings or houses. It was about truth. About finally being seen, heard, loved, even after she was gone. Delanne stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor behind her. "Unbelievable," she muttered, grabbing her purse. I watched her go. This time I didn't look away. The next day I returned to the house alone. I walked through the front door with the key clutched in my hand, and this time it felt like it belonged there. Like it was supposed to be turning in that lock. Like Mom was welcoming me home again. The living room still smelled faintly of her perfume, a soft, powdery floral scent that clung to the curtains and pillows. I stood there for a moment, just breathing it in. My heartbeat had finally begun to slow. But I still felt that ache in my chest, an ache that had lived there since the funeral, like a bruise that wouldn't heal. I walked into her bedroom. The Bible was still on the nightstand, open now, the pages gently curled. I sat on the edge of her bed and looked out the window, where her garden was already starting to bloom, yellow daffodils pushing up through the soil like little suns. She'd told me they'd come back this spring. She was right. I turned the letter over in my hands again. I had read it 5 times since finding it, and still every word landed like a whispered hug. She hadn't forgotten me. She hadn't believed Delaney. She had trusted me enough to bury her truth where only I would find it. Mom's last gift wasn't the house. It wasn't the ring. It was her trust. Till one thing remained unresolved, the engagement ring. I hadn't seen it since the will reading. Delaney had taken it that day, slipped it onto her finger as casually as if it were a cocktail ring. I thought about letting it go. I really did. But something inside me refused. So I texted her, I need the ring. It wasn't yours." She replied 3 minutes later, "Delaney, you've got everything else. What do you need that for?" It wasn't about need. It was about meaning. It wasn't just jewelry. It was the only part of my mother that had touched both her hand and her heart. I remembered the way she'd twisted it, absent-mindedly, when she was thinking. The way she held it after my father left. The way she promised years ago, "One day, Harper, I want this to be yours." I told Delaney exactly that. She didn't reply right away, and honestly, I didn't expect her to. But the next evening, when I stepped outside to water the garden, I found a small black box sitting on the porch. No note. No knock. Just the box. Inside was the ring. My breath caught. It was even smaller than I remembered. Delicate, simple, with a single sapphire in the center instead of a diamond. Mom had always said diamonds were too cold. I held it in my hand and it felt warm, not because of the sun or the air, but because I knew without any doubt now that she meant it for me. I slipped it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. And in that moment, something in me let go, not the grief I knew that would linger for a long time, but the need to prove myself, the ache of being overlooked, the bitterness that had started to grow after the funeral. All of it faded. I stood there in the fading light, barefoot in the grass, the garden blooming around me, the ring gleaming softly on my hand. She hadn't left me behind. She just left the truth in a place only I would think to look. A week later, the house felt different. It wasn't just mine now, it felt like ours, me and Mom. Her presence lingered, not in things but in the space itself, in the soft creak of the hallway floorboards, in the warmth of morning light streaming through the kitchen window, in the quiet hum of the garden outside. I'd found her again, not in the inheritance, not even in the ring, but in the way she still filled this place without being here. I sat on the porch one morning with her Bible in my lap, a cup of coffee cradled between my palms, the same mug she used to use, the one with a faded sunflower and chipped handle. I never thought something so simple could feel so sacred. I flipped through the pages, watching her underlines, the tiny hearts she'd drawn beside certain verses, and the little notes scribbled in the margins. She had written a lot more than I ever realized. Some entries were dated, some weren't. One, just weeks before she died, stopped me cold. Harper sees the world differently. Quieter. Deeper. I hope she knows I see her. My throat tightened. That one sentence undid me. All this time I thought I was invisible, unchosen, passed over. But the truth was, she did see me. She just never said it out loud in the ways I expected. Delaney hadn't spoken to me since she left the ring. I wasn't sure if she was embarrassed or angry or just done. And maybe that was okay. Maybe we'd talk again someday, or maybe not. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying that weight. I wasn't trying to fix something that never really worked. I'd spent so much of my life being the quiet one, the steady one, thinking that meant I had to keep everything together. Now I was finally letting go. I spent the rest of the morning planting fresh blooms in Mom's garden, marigold, bluebells, and those little white alyssums she used to call snow kisses. My hands were dirty, my hair pulled back, sweat prickling at the back of my neck, and I felt good. Not happy, not yet, but rooted. Real. Present. Later that evening, I took the ring off and placed it inside a small glass box on my dresser, next to the letter and a photo of me and Mom from when I was a kid. We're both laughing, ice cream smeared on our faces, the sun in her hair like a crown. She looked alive in that picture, more alive than I remembered seeing her in years. That's the version I wanted to keep. Not the one from the hospital bed. Not the version clouded by what Delaney said or what the first will claimed. The one who laughed. Who trusted me. Who underlined verses and left breadcrumbs of love between the pages of her Bible, just waiting for me to find them. I know now that not all legacies are written in legal ink. Some are handwritten, quiet, hidden where only the right eyes will look. And I found mine. If you've ever felt overlooked, by family, by someone you gave your heart to, know this. Sometimes love doesn't show itself the way you expect. But that doesn't mean it wasn't there. Sometimes the ones who loved us most trusted us to find the truth. And when we do, everything changes. It's been 3 months since I found the letter. 3 months since I stood in that lawyer's office with my hands trembling and my voice steady for the first time. Time since Delaney left without saying a word. Since I came home, placed the ring in that little glass box, and finally breathed like I hadn't in a year. Life didn't magically fix itself after that. The house is still too quiet some days. There are nights I lie awake, wishing I could ask Mom just one more thing, wishing she'd written more, explained more, told me why she let so much go unsaid while she was here. But then again, maybe she knew I'd find what I needed. I've spent these past few weeks going through her things, slowly. No rushing. No purging. Just one box at a time. Her handwriting is on everything. Sticky notes, envelopes tucked inside old cookbooks. She left little pieces of herself behind everywhere, some sad, some sweet. One note just said, "Love is quiet when it's real." That one hit me hardest. I used to think love had to be loud, that if people cared, they'd show it clearly, loudly, publicly. But maybe some people, like Mom, loved in whispers, in meals cooked without asking, in midnight blankets draped over your shoulders, in a ring promised softly, in a letter hidden in the folds of scripture. I've stopped trying to understand Delaney. She never responded to my message after the ring showed up. No apology, no excuses. And honestly, I don't need one anymore. Maybe she truly believed what she said that day, or maybe she just couldn't stand not being the one in control. Either way, I'm done chasing peace with people who only offer chaos. Uncle Marshall called me last week. He apologized for the mix-up, said he'd updated his records and filed everything properly. He sounded relieved that I hadn't taken legal action. I told him I wasn't interested in lawsuits or public battles, just the truth. And I found it. I've started journaling again, planting, reading, even cooking some of Mom's old recipes. The life I left behind to care for her, I'm slowly building something new in its place. A life that fits me now. One where I'm not just the quiet sister or the one who stayed behind. I'm just me. And you know what? That's enough. If you're still watching this, maybe you know what it's like to be overlooked. Maybe someone you loved left you with more questions than answers. Or maybe you've been made to feel like you weren't enough, not smart enough, not loud enough, not important enough. Let me say this to you from someone who's lived in that shadow. You are not invisible. And just because someone couldn't love you the way you needed doesn't mean you weren't worthy of love. Sometimes the people who saw us the clearest were just too broken or scared or sick to show it out loud. But the love was there. And if you look hard enough, you might find it, in the quiet places, between the pages of a Bible, tucked in the corner of a garden, or maybe in the parts of yourself you forgot were beautiful. Mom didn't leave me nothing. She left me everything that mattered. So if you've ever felt forgotten, if someone you loved made you feel like you were invisible, please know you're not alone. Sometimes the love we were searching for was always there, just hidden, waiting for us to find it in our own time, in our own way. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, whether it's your own story, a moment you related to, or just how this made you feel. And if you believe stories like this matter, real ones, full of heart and truth, please give the video a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us we're not alone. Thank you for listening, truly. I'm Harper, and this was my truth.